Hi, I'm Zach Rocha, Executive Director of Sidekick Sports Academy and a former journalist for the Standard Times in New Bedford, Massachusetts. In December 2023, Marques Houtman was named an official first-time nominee to the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, eligible as a candidate to the class of 2024. In this podcast, Marques and I will discuss his Hall of Fame-worthy career, where he starred for the Cape Verdean National Team in the late 2000s, leading them to success they haven't seen since or before. We'll discuss his time playing for Kobe Bryant's dad, Joe Jellybean Bryant, with the American Basketball Association in the mid-2000s. We'll discuss his two-time Hall of Fame career at UMass Dartmouth, his family, his Cape Verdean roots, and his upbringing in the south coast of Massachusetts. Marques' story is one that I think you'll find very, very unique and very, very special. Enjoy. So it was about 2 days before Christmas, and I am just closing up my evening and, getting ready for the holiday weekend. And the NBA announces its Hall of Fame list. And so, inquisitive mind, the journalist in me is always there. And I see the list, and I've always just been a basketball historian and a hoop head. And I see Vince Carter, I see Chauncey Billups, see some familiar names, and I'm like, oh, I wonder who else is on the list. Who are some other names that maybe not everybody knows, but maybe I know just because, again, the basketball nerd in me. And then I scroll down, and I see this one particular name, and I go, I know that guy. And it's Marques Houtman. And I have been friends with Marques Houtman for about 20 years, whether it's through playing together on the court, whether it's through doing stories on him as an athlete, whether just being friends now. We've done some business relationships. And I'm like, well, it's 10:30 at night. I don't want to interrupt the man's life, but he's got to know. And I sent you a text, and you sent right back, and you said, where did you find this? I said NBA.com. And then we texted. I gave you a call and just kind of talked me through finding out. I was honored to be the guy, I guess, to deliver good news and tell me what's going through your head since you found out a few weeks ago that you are officially an eligible candidate for the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame class of 2024.
Imagine that one. So you give me a call, you give me that text, and I go, first it was a screenshot, and I'm like, okay, he got some names there. I'm thinking they're just doing some recognition of African basketball. And you finally sent that, and I went, what's going on here? There's not too many other people in my name at all.
No, and
so it went crazy. It was wild.
I saw Marques Johnson. I know Marques Johnson, played for the Bucks back in the 80s. And then right below it, Marques Houtman. Talk me through. You've had a few weeks to process it mentally.
Mm-hmm.
You're on the same list as I said, Vince Carter, who's probably the one guarantee, right? The headliner this year. You got Chauncey Billups. You got Michael Cooper. Terry Cummings was a heck of a player. Maurice Lucas, Sean Marion, and then you. I remember even the next day, I saw you in the Source magazine, which is a cultural milestone. We all know the Biggie song,
Right.
and you're in the Source. So just, again, talk to me further, Marques.
So, I mean, first of all, it's surreal. It's unreal. It's a shock. It's humbling. But ultimately, it's just honorable. I'm in disbelief still, but it's an honor to have your name next to all these names of historic basketball and just legendary basketball. Because, you pick up basketball as a kid, you don't think of no end roads at all. But it's one of those things where I'm still in disbelief. But wasn't it sweet who I hear it from? Because you and I consider people that actually finish off the articles.
Mhm.
So in order to find that information out, you gotta finish the whole article.
Yeah. Now, I don't think word has spread all that much yet. That's obviously a big
Mhm.
reason why we're talking here, why we're trying to get the word out about you and your career. Um, has anybody reached out to you, friends, family, former coaches, former teammates, any reaction at all that you've gotten so far?
Yeah, I had a buddy that I played with, Frank Barrows, at UMass, and he sent me a text with the link just saying, "Why are you on this?" And I go, "I'm trying to figure out the same. I'm trying to get the answer to that question too."
Yeah. So
But no, he congratulated me and was, he said he was flipping through like everything else as a sports guy, and just came across that.
So you, again, I think it's shocking. People would probably think if you've been nominated officially to the Basketball Hall of Fame, you're on NBA.com, you're in the Source, you're in all these reputable news organizations, that the Hall would have reached out to you and just said, "Hey, congratulations, you're a potential candidate. You're a potential nominee and inductee into the Hall of Fame." But that's not what's happened here. And so that's, I think, something that's very interesting as well. And
Right.
we'll find out who nominated you. I think we're all excited to find out who that person could be,
Hmm.
because in order to be put on this list, it has to be people that really know basketball.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if people really know basketball, then they know your story. And
Hmm.
one of the things we're going to spend this time doing on this podcast is telling your story, because your story is unique. Your story is worthy of this candidacy. It's worthy of this honor. You represent a, basically a pioneer in Cape Verdean basketball, in South Coast Massachusetts basketball, and in African basketball. You are somebody that was the first in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of time that's actually gone on since your playing career at the highest level as a professional has come to a close. Uh,
Hmm.
and a lot of time has passed, and there's nobody that's really duplicated what you've done. And I think that's very interesting. That's very unique, and that's something that I want to really dive in with you on. And
Hmm.
ask you to, obviously, you're such a wonderful human being. I've known you for many years. You are a humble human being, but I think you're also a truthful human being. And so hopefully trying to, with my guidance, putting your career in context for everybody.
Appreciate
But
that, man.
one of the things that I think stands out is the time that you spent on the Cape Verdean national team, particularly between 2007 and 2009. Let's start there. I think that's probably the prime of your career, that in terms of achievement, and that's the prime that
Hmm.
I think a lot of uh, electors would be looking at, and people that would be voting in the process. Walk us through that time period in your career, 2007 to 2009.
So 2007 is accumulation of years before that too. But 2007 was the year that Cape Verde, we came in third in Africa. We got the bronze medal. We qualified for the pre-Olympics for the 2008 Olympics, and the pre-qualifiers were in Greece the following summer. So in 2007, we were underdogs, but deep down, we had certain fight. We've been playing together for about 7, 8 years now, the nucleus that we had. And we'll get into the ups and downs leading into that. But that tournament in 2007 was the first time that they were kind of celebrating African basketball. Before that, Africa has 53, 52 nations. And they've only allowed, one country to go to the Olympics or World Games
And
all
and
the way up until
and
actually, I want to say 2009 or 2011.
and on that point, there's 52 nations in Africa. Where is Cape Verde in terms of size in relation to those
Oh
52
man.
nations?
Cape Verde's they don't tip over 1 million people on the islands.
Are they 52 out of 52? I mean, are they the
They
smallest
could
nation in
be.
Africa,
Nah,
or
there's these small, little knickknack
okay?
islands and that are countries, but yeah, I mean, the majority of the Cape Verdeans are kind of in the diaspora, to tell you the truth. Um, so yeah, Uh, we're not highly touted to be the top, but we were competing. It is a sport, so anything can happen. But that year was when, I was coming off of playing professional in Europe, and just for people who don't understand the difference between the professional and the national teams is, in the summertime is usually when the national teams get together and they play in their localized area. So the Americas, the in Europe, Africa, uh, and whoever's the top from those particular nations, they go to the bigger, either the World Games every 2 years. It's either the World Games or it's the Olympics. Um, so going into that, a small nation, but we did have a few pros on our team. We've been playing together for a little bit. And in that tournament, I played well. And the reason why I really played well is because I had some workhorses under there that are my brothers to this day, that the last thing they wanted to even do was score. So I'm getting double doubles and 9 rebounds and as a point guard. And, it's because those guys were down there, you know, carving out that area so I can just come in there and just kind of do my thing. I think another a big part of the success is also is, and we could talk about it as well as like where we're from. Um, we're combo guards that can kind of do it all, but nobody really gets over 6 feet in New Bedford. And I happen to be the one. I always tell people when they say, "Hey, man, like where you from or how you play?" Because we have mid range, we can go from 1 to 2 at any time. And I said that everybody plays where I'm from. I just happen to be the one that was 6'3".
6'3",
Um,
195 pounds. That was your
right.
playing weight when you were in your
Yeah, I
prime,
was a
right?
big guard. And the story behind that was being a small guard as a kid and then getting a growth spurt. But just going back to that, as far as playing, and so we play against Angola, play against Morocco, but it's just it's crazy to play and represent your country in general or your family because of the story of your ancestors. But it's another thing to be successful finally at doing it.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why we had a lot of success in that tournament is because the last thing teams thought in these countries where this is a smaller nation. They don't have too many big names, so we were overlooked a few times,
Sure.
and we got some big wins from that.
Sure. So in 2007, you won the bronze medal. Uh, to this day, the biggest international achievement for the Cape Verdean nation, correct? I know
Mhm.
in 2023, just last year, there was a qualification into the World's tournament, right?
Yep, the
Uh,
World Games, World Cup.
the World Cup. But in terms of actually in the competition itself, this is the creme de la creme. This is the shining moment in the history of Cape Verdean basketball.
Yeah, we came in third. We beat Nigeria, we beat Egypt, we beat Morocco, um, we beat Rwanda. We only lost to Angola in that tournament, and Angola has always been the powerhouse. The guy that Charles Barkley got into it with and all the members of that team, I got to sit and meet those guys when I played in Angola. So we're junkies, Zach, we're sports junkies. So it's like I'm a sports junkie and I'm a part of it. So like that was big. And I think that's where we kind of changed how they looked at African teams in general. Because following that, now they were bringing 3 teams
Hmm.
to the World Games. And now they in the World Cup they extended it to 5 countries. And people call me and hey man, if you guys did it at that point, you would have went. I said, but it's not really like I don't look at it that way.
Yeah.
You know, I look at it as where we were trying to win the gold. That's what our goal was. We came in third, which was cool. But now you look back and it's like, wow, that was big. And like now
Yeah.
these kids that got to see us, they're excelling. So that was life changing. Coming back and I got a family that lived in Cape Verde Islands, and just the whole community. And that was like I tell my students at school now working in education. That was right before that little social media uh
Yeah,
injection.
so when you say life changing, what's what's the first thing that happens? Let's even talk about the bronze medal. You go on the podium. What's
Mhm.
that feeling of pride? How can you express that in words? What that feels like?
Well, for athletes that know, first and foremost, with their brothers, you're working all summer. Um, your teammates, that common goal, it ended, and you ended with a win. Um, I got to get accolades from that. Uh, I
All
was
tournament
named,
team, top point
yeah,
guard. Yep.
I was named number one point guard in Africa. All tournament team for the FIBA. And there was only 25 people that got that year. You know, Carmelo Anthony got it one year that year in the Americas, and so like those things are cool. That's not what you shoot for. Um, like I said, the game's a little bit different, even from professional, when your country's across your chest.
Mhm.
Um, and I got to grow. I was, I had to grow. I was a New Bedford kid, a young kid, a East Coast kid,
Yeah.
a little too smart for his own good. So it was one of these humbling things where it's like, you know what, this was all worth it.
Yeah.
Um,
When
and
when you return to the Cape Verde Islands after that with the team, whether it's the next competition or after that
mhm.
ceremony, what is happening? What is the feeling? I
it
mean,
was it
obviously
was
you would think in Africa, soccer or football, as they would call it, is the big sport. But I would think basketball has got to be number two, and it's got to. I mean, the sense of pride in the country. Like, what is happening when you return? Are you a conquering hero? Is that the feeling?
it was crazy. We had a people met us at the airport, took a bus ride throughout the city, met with the president, met with all kind of people. They were just so proud of us. I got to meet some of the freedom fighters that fought with Amilcar Cabral against Portugal in the 70s for liberation. Um, it's just it's different when because you're out there playing, and this is what I mean about the focus too. But as an athlete, like as a pro athlete, you're like, man, I got to get this money, I got to do this, I got to make sure I shine. But that was a moment where it was like, all right, we just flew back to where ancestors have walked, and we're making them proud because who knows what the real sacrifices really were, So what did I sacrificed the summer of not hanging out to make sure I stay in shape, but like what's the real sacrifice that happened before summer,
Yeah.
that was amazing. And seeing the young kids and inspiring them, and now years later, seeing those kids that are men now talking about how they remember that,
Yeah.
because I was
It's
one
not,
of those kids, I was one of those kids.
yeah, and clearly, the story continues, and that's the
Mhm.
reason we're talking. You wouldn't be a nominee
Right.
or again an eligible candidate for the Basketball Hall of Fame unless this was a special moment in time, and a special
Yeah.
moment only comes through all the hard work
Hmm.
and sacrifice leading up to it. And a special moment really only gets recognized when time has passed. That's
Right.
why the Hall of Fame is so important. History museums are so important because they dignify this one thing and
Hmm.
mark the moment so that many others can be inspired by it. So
Absolutely.
I think that's the big takeaway from that particular experience for anybody who's connected to it in whatever way, whether it's a
Hmm.
countryman, whether it's your friends, whether it's your family, whether it's just anybody that you connect with somehow, some way. Um, when you think about your Cape Verdean heritage, what is that
Hmm.
story? What is Marques Houtman's story with the Cape Verde Islands?
So my grandparents on my mother's side were born here around 1929 and immediately went to Cape Verde with during the Depression. So my great grandparents were all born there. Um, so that migration, the stories that we heard as a kid, because my grandmother took the boat there as an infant, comes back when she's 16, has to go back again. And there's these stories of how they lost at sea and all this perseverance as a kid, and how ancestors are and older people. You look at them and you're like, man, you went through that, and they're like, yeah, but that's nothing. We had to do what we needed to do. So I was intrigued by that side. My father's side, is the Houtman side, is half Cape Verdean. My grandfather, the Houtman side, um, and the other half is like from the islands, St. Lucia and the Bahama areas and all that. But my grandmother, my father's mother, her family and her their descendants from Cape Verde Islands too. Um, so we have it all around us. We do have relatives that still do go back and forth. So like just hearing of all that, it was nothing but hard work that was in the background. It was nothing but toughness that people went through and no complaints and all for the next generation and people smiling after they did it, you know? So that influence when we did eventually get an opportunity to go there, she always talked about how Cape Verde was and you hear about the islands and just the weather and never really thought about basketball going there as a kid, but just always thought about like, wow, man, like I could never take a boat, a couple times and get lost at sea for 5 or 6 weeks and you just think like, what would it take to do that? And then my father's side, like her mother, my father's grandmother, she sold everything and just flew to the United States from Cape Verde. They were rich out there. They had land. So there was a lot of risk taking. That's what I pulled out young. Like, wow, we're risk takers.
Hmm.
Like the females, they went and did what they needed to do. And there was no complaining. The men were tough as nails. Um, so I think that just that background of you kind of got to finish whatever you start, no matter what, was so and deep. And us personally, similar to your family. Like there's a certain way we're gonna live. You can daydream, you can be a star, you can think of this, but there's certain things that we have already done, and you are gonna continue this.
Sure.
So,
Now, now you obviously, when people read about, and we'll get into the basketball part, the fun part, right?
mhm,
The you had a natural athletic ability. We have several coaches that have expressed that about your playing style, and all the different coaches you had, from Joe Jellybean Bryant, Kobe Bryant's dad, who you
mhm,
played for, in the ABA, the Boston
mhm.
Frenzy, around that same period, the 2007 time frame.
Yeah.
You had that from your national team coach with the Cape Verde. You had that at UMass Dartmouth with Brian Baptiste,
Mhm.
a Hall of Famer in his own right. He's been
Right.
coaching there for forever,
Mhm,
and has done a great job there. And your coaches, FC Porto and the other places you play professionally,
mhm.
natural athletic ability. Um, that's not what gets you into the Hall of Fame, though. It's the work ethic. It's the ability to take whatever natural skills you've been blessed with by birth and maximizing those. And that doesn't come without a great sacrifice to the body, to the brain, to the emotional spirit to overcome things. So when you describe the way that your family came from Cape Verde over to New Bedford, Massachusetts, where most of them have settled, your immediate family. This sounds like these are the things that helped you to be successful. Um, when it comes to your family itself, you said you didn't think about basketball when you go to the islands and back, but obviously somewhere along the way, basketball became a very, very big part of your life. When and what is your
Mhm.
first basketball memory, if you still have it?
So to touch on the work ethic thing, you're absolutely right with that. When you see, I was lucky enough to see people they made that a way of life. So by the time you did get to ball and you find out, wow, I got to put some work in. Thank God I did see it deep down. Um, but my first memories are being in the projects with my dad, playing ball, um, and him shooting with us. And I don't remember like when we first shot around. But I did start maybe recalling about maybe 5 or 6 where we started going different places and everybody knew him as a shooter. Like they knew my father as a certain individual. Like, and my father's real humble, but it was like, hey, how we doing? Hey, what's up? You gonna do this? We gonna play here? And I'm like, what's going on here? And my dad was humble, but as a baller, he had his ego there too, and he said, "This is what happens if you do what you're supposed to do." So I think one of the first memories I do remember is shooting in the West End playground on Hillman Street in New Bedford, the old Volk outside court. So it's funny because there was no nets, um, and these guys are hitting. All these 70s. I was raised by 70s cats. That's what I tell these students because they're like, "Man, I thought you were younger. You Mister, you're all over me." I said, "Listen, I was raised by 70s cats, and what they did was they hung out and shot around, and they were marksmen." So I just recall learning that you shoot it, if you miss it, and you get the rebound, you give it to that guy. He takes his layup. Now it's your turn to shoot.
Yeah.
If you shoot and you basically get to shoot until you miss. So I'm scrambling to get a rebound. I miss it. Somebody else shoots it. Somebody else gets a rebound. Finally, I go grab the rebound, and because I didn't realize it went in, I grabbed the rebound. And I go to I go to my father's friend. I go, why aren't you taking your layup? And he said, because that's how mine go in. So it was like, no, there's no net there. So like those that's like the first time it kind of came online where I was like, we're not just throwing this ball around. Like certain people can actually do stuff with it, and I was young. Around that same time, I got to see my father play in these summer leagues. And my father shot from wherever, and his form was always the same, and he was a lefty. So you shoot from near half court, could shoot close off the backboard. They could just do that, and we played horse all day, every day. So like that's when I was like, all right, when do I get to play on a team? And then you get to go to the Boys and Girls Club, 7, 8, 9. So like, it was just cool to be around these legends. I didn't realize they were legends in their own right out here.
Because what's the highest level of organized ball that your dad played?
So my father played a year at UMass Dartmouth.
When it was not even that, it was
It was,
SMU,
yes,
right?
SMU.
Southeastern Massachusetts University.
Yeah,
And that
Southern
would have been
Massachusetts.
in the 70s, 60s?
Yeah, so that's 74, I think, and then he
Okay.
ended up graduating around like 76, 77,
And then you were born in 1979.
79. Yep.
And you have how many brothers and sisters?
I got one brother.
Okay.
Yep,
And
younger brother Isaiah.
is he an athlete?
So for those who don't know, my brother is the athlete. My brother is class of 99, the AAU pinnacle kind of. But my
Class
brother
of
was a
99
jumping jack.
at New Bedford High
New
School.
Bedford High, yeah.
Okay.
So my brother was a jumping jack. My brother was hanging on the rim at 12 and dunking at 13.
And who's older and who's younger?
And I'm younger. I mean, I'm older. He was younger than me. I'm 18 months older
Okay.
than him. So we started dunking kind of at the same time. I'm like going into my sophomore year. So he dunked before me, but he didn't dunk before me. But we had a healthy competition. Our parents, they knew what they wanted. They wanted a certain type of relationship for us to have. They expressed that. They knew that going in. But we kept each other
That
polished.
said, who would win one-on-one more often in the at the park or in the driveway? Like who won
Well,
those?
it was me because I was older at first. So 18
Okay.
months when when you're 13, you're a little bit, but then that changed quick. That's what I mean. We end up creating a monster. So my brother played as a freshman in high school. An excellent athlete, such a good athlete that instead of picking basketball, he ended up running Division I track at Holy Cross, and I
Wow.
was a track coach.
Wow.
So family's close, you know. Um, But
Now,
as far as being around these legends and this certain era of, all right, you're gonna have to work at it. You're gonna be able to work at it as long as your responsibilities are done. If your responsibilities are done, then I just love being around those type of gentlemen.
sure. Now, was your mother an athlete too? Is that where you also have some of the genetic support?
No, my mother was an athlete. My mother was a model for a little bit. That's where I do get a little bit of the stretch height. My mother's 5'9".
Okay.
My father was 6 feet.
Okay.
But no, my mother was just a sweet lady, and another hard worker, and an organized individual. And believe it or not, she had the attitude of an athlete.
Yeah.
Like, get over it. Get
Yeah.
over it. There's more games.
Yeah.
And if you can't get over it, then you're done.
Yeah.
Then you don't
And
deserve
it sounds
it. You know
it
what I
sounds like
mean?
these were instilled young to you.
Oh, extremely young.
So you fall in love with basketball. At what point did you know you were maybe not even just good, but you knew you were
Mhm.
special? Like at what point does that click for you as a basketball player?
Well, like around 11 or 12, I could see that scoring kind of came easy. Um, I think it's because of the lessons I was getting from the older gentlemen. Um, them playing me one on one for real, not like hardcore where I'm getting hurt, but pushing me to certain extents and saying, this is why you got to get to this spot. So I learned about spots early. I'm known as a 3-point shooter, but I get mine underneath a lot, and that's how I accumulate a lot of points because I can just go get a basket.
Mhm.
Um, Defense was the other side. We knew going in. Um, and this is probably attributed to my dad, just right now, complaining early at the Boys and Girls Club. Like, oh, the ref didn't do this and da da da. And my father just sitting here going, hey, you guys could have won 2-0.
Mm.
You could be on fire on defense every game.
Yeah.
So these type of things. But around I think it was 12 or 11 or 12, I played in the tournament. I had like 20. I mean, I had 20, we had like 28 or something. It's like one of those. And I'm like, wow, man, like, and people coming up to me, and then that's my father was like, so yeah, you scored pretty easy today, huh? And I'm like, yeah, man, he goes, well, I can be playing with 9 and 10-year-olds, and you ain't gonna beat SHI without a jump shot. So it crushed me, but at the same time, he humbled me. And then the next day we went and bought weights at BJ's. I remember going to get weights and working on doing wrist exercises, and squeezing it, and making sure that I could get the lift and then shoot instead of just the whole momentum, and then starting at 5 feet and going from 5 feet to 6 feet and not getting to 10 feet for months. Um, and perfecting that and learning about arc as a kid. So I think my dad saw stuff in us, definitely knew we were going to be good athletes. Um, but he knew the long game of the parent. He sat way in the corner, and if we looked at him, we were coming out the gym. So it was more of like be focused, understand where you're at. But I'd say about 12 or 13 where I'm like, hold on, I can do something with this,
Yeah.
but I was small. Um,
When you,
I had back issues as a kid. I don't know if you knew that, I was born
mm,
C-section. I was born breech. I was
okay.
born out first. Um so I was double jointed. I ended up being C-section, and this is where my brother passed me. This is about, I want to say like 12 or 13. My mother's like, something's up, because I'm sitting there like, all baggy and slouched out, and then Isaiah passed me, and she's like, hold on, this kid's 18 months older than him. I know he had a growth spurt, but he shouldn't be. So what we did, we went and saw a doctor, and I was this close to wearing a back brace, man. I had to go to
Wow.
Lakeville for a good 3 or 4 months. Started doing exercises, and then I shot up. I shot
Yeah.
up. I grew like 4.5 inches in the summer.
And this is
Uh,
how old are you when this
going
happened?
into going into my freshman year. So I
No kidding.
graduated eighth grade at about 5'3", and I like that summer I went there about 5'9", almost 5'8".
Were you in pain?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. It was slouchy, you
Huh.
know. I was literally that. And then once I started doing exercises and certain stretches, the doctors were like, this is just a kid that's just needs to grow into it. And that's what happened. That's how I transitioned back to a point guard to be a professional, because I was running for my life from 9 to 12 years old, man. I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the strongest, I couldn't really jump yet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I had the smarts, and I was already 3-point threat, 10 years old.
So to a degree, the physical disability forced you to grow the emotional intelligence and the
Absolutely.
mental intelligence to overcome that.
Absolutely.
Then when the physical side comes through, Now we've got a complete player.
Right.
New Bedford High School is where you played, public high school. In the 90s, it was uh, it was nationally known for basketball. This was before prep schools took over the world over the last 10, 15 years, right?
Yeah.
In order to be seen. As you said, even in 2007, when you were leading the Cape Verdean National Team to a bronze medal in an international competition, we didn't have social media yet. So much of what was being seen was diamonds in the rough, right? And trying to
Absolutely.
get people to actually come out and see things. In 1993 and 1994, New Bedford High School won back-to-back state championships. And you had not only the basketball team doing that, you had the baseball team doing that, you had the football team doing that, you had the volleyball team doing that. You probably named the sport, and they were doing that. And that was just an incredible moment of athletic excellence. I remember the Boston Globe, which was the newspaper of the day. They named New Bedford the best high school in the state for athletics. And again, this was in a different time and place than what we see today, for not just New Bedford High School, but just public schools nationwide when it comes to sports and athletics. And so I'm just trying to put a context onto what you were coming into. Um, St. Anthony's of New Jersey,
Right.
legendary high school. Their head coach, Bobby Hurley, has had documentaries written about him, books written about him, and we know he's in the Hall of Fame, the Naismith Hall of Fame. He took his team to New Bedford to play the Whalers on a Saturday afternoon.
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking, this is the height of high school basketball in America. Marcus Wills was a star at a young age, was a sophomore when they won that first state championship, went on to score over 1,000 points in college Division One. And the rivalry at the time between New Bedford High School and the neighboring town, Fall River, which was called Durfee
Absolutely.
High School, the line was out the parking lot, not even out the door to the gym,
Absolutely.
out the parking lot to see high school basketball. It was similar to what high school football in Texas, I imagine it to
Absolutely.
be. And so Durfee at the time was led by Chris Herron, who went on to play in the NBA, has become very famous for some documentaries written, or shouldn't say written, but
Hmm.
broadcast about him and his overcoming drug addiction. Heck of a player, right? And so you've got these battling factions between two historic towns. To this day, New Bedford is still the biggest fishing port in the world, I believe, per
Hmm.
capita. But it
Right.
really had made its mark in the mid 1800s with the whaling industry, the New Bedford whalers. Fall River was famous for its textile industry. Both of those cities had that at the turn of the 20th century. They were still very big bastions of industry into the 90s. So you've got these hyper competitive people. You've got this insane appetite for basketball at the time. You've got these super athletes. And again, you represent the Cape Verdean population, which cohabitated a lot with the Portuguese population. New
Right.
Bedford, Fall River, Brockton, that south coast
Right.
piece of Massachusetts is to this day is still the biggest haven for immigrants from the Cape Verdean Islands and Portugal, particularly the Azorean Portuguese islands.
Right.
Um, and so all of this is happening, and then you step in,
Hmm.
and it's
Right.
time for you to come in during this time period, just after the 93, 94 peak. And what does that do to you as a player? What does that do to you as a competitor? What does that do to you as a person? What are you thinking about as you step into the high school gym for the first time
Right.
to shoot your first, practice jump
It's
shot?
basically my freshman year is 93. Okay, September 90, 92 into no, wait a minute. No, September 93. So they just won the state championship. So just to put it in perspective, my freshman year, New Bedford won 10 state championships in 3 years,
In
two and a
big
half
sports,
years.
not the
Yeah.
small sports,
So they
the
went
American basketball, football, baseball, the
back to
big
back
American
in
sports.
football,
Yep.
back to back basketball, back to back baseball, three-peat volleyball, uh, track and field boys, track and field girls, and I think the volleyball girls did some. But all I know there was 10. So my freshman year was the repeat year.
Mhm.
Okay. So like my eighth grade year is when they won everything. Then my freshman year is so I'm coming from Holy Family, Holy Name middle school. I go into a freshman year and Friday night, if you didn't go to the football game at a certain time, midway through the first quarter, it was 21 nothing. They didn't lose a game for 2 years. They didn't lose a game anywhere. I got a couple buddies that are like 98-0 in volleyball, three rings. So going into it, and then this hip hop influence. So that my freshman year is when Snoop Dogg, Nas, Illmatic, Reasonable Doubt, all these like I tell these kids, I said I was right in the middle of it, man. Like I got the best of both worlds, man. I got cleaning music with the 70s, and then see I'm into philosophy, so music's a big influence. Um, it made us what we were doing was we were actually what they were doing anyway. They were winning, but they were putting their money where their mouth was,
Mhm.
and that was the big thing of rapping and the whole, the whole era. So what it did was, and this is one of my main influences, it was I got to keep this chain, I got to keep this thing going when I get my chance. So your brother graduates, and then it's my freshman year. So I got to see your brother play. I got to see these other guys. I got to see the intensity. I got to see what it took, and then they won. So it was like, okay, this is what I have to do. And then those seniors and juniors and seniors, they checked in with you. I got older cousins, playing football or basketball, and they're checking in with you, checking in on your grades. Like, hey, like you're playing, right? How's everything? Hey, we're going to boys club after. We're gonna run pickup here. It was this brotherhood. So I think that coincided for people who don't know our area. That's just our community. We had one high school. Um, but just to be around those athletes, like you said, like Marcus was sitting at the lunch and, go sit with him for a little bit and you got all these letters and from all these different schools and you go to the banquet and Calipari's at the banquet and he's sitting there going, I came here to get him. He
And
didn't
that's when
sugarcoat nothing.
and that's when John Calipari was coaching UMass, if I
That's what,
remember.
yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Will and I have talked about that. So it was good to be in the mix. It was good to be starstruck and then humbled by the stars, and then shown the way that we are supposed to play. It's a Saturday afternoon night game. Can't recall who it was, but I remember it being my junior year because Dwayne Pina and a couple other guys are out there, and we just remember earlier in the afternoon. That was a day that Iverson caught that backdoor backwards alley oop that was thrown where he was just like, and I'm like, how is that dude that height do that? And that was just the time. So like we're trying that in the back, and it's like high school was fun. We had a lot of fun, like we loved it, but we put that work in. So sophomore year, I get moved up end of the year because they had the powerhouse team, so I couldn't play varsity as a sophomore. Um, they ended up losing to a good Brockton team. Um, and then the next year, I got to play. I didn't score 1,000 points in high school, but it was one of those experiences where it is nothing like teammates. I felt like we went as far we could have won it. Um, we lost to the state champs. We lost to Taunton that one year. Uh, but we still upheld, New Bedford Pride basketball and where we're from, and people still talk about, that those teams. So
Now,
that was a big influence.
your junior year, you're on varsity, so you spent 2 years on varsity, as we said, a very competitive high school program at that time.
Hmm.
And what do you remember about your junior year in particular? Were you starting at shooting guard, point guard? Were you
So
coming off
my
the
junior
bench?
year, it took me about 8, 9 games to start to try and earn that spot. There's a competitive individual in front of me. Tim Perry is senior scorer. Any other school, he'd be all everything. That was just the level of athletes that we had in our area. Um, so I worked for that. My senior year, I averaged like 24. We were an excellent team. Fell short at UMass Boston. Um, but I wasn't really highly recruited like that. You know, the AU was starting up, but
Mhm.
it like my parents, they 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 didn't want it to be some pipe dream of who this kid thinks he is, you know? And I applaud them on how they did that. You know, they didn't bust my ego, but we were putting in our heads earlier that we were gonna go to school for school.
Mhm.
My brother and I are math guys. So I was like, yeah, I should be probably get a scholarship, but it's 97, Zach. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't,
There
you
was
know,
no recruiting websites out there. You weren't just sending your video nonstop.
right.
Either your high school coach is reaching out through their, web, the college coach is reaching back, maybe a journalist, gets your name out there.
Right.
There was no streamline of the
Nah.
process. It was sometimes the day that the coach showed up, if you played bad that day, well, there it went.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you played well and the coach was looking at another player. I mean, it was a
Or
different
you only get seen because
recruiting
they
situation.
saw
Yes.
another player.
Yeah.
Bruiser Flint from UMass Amherst. I remember I have a quote somewhere in my scrapbook saying, I don't even know who this kid is. I just heard he could light it up when he went to go see me play against when I went to see, when he went to see Jonathan DePina from South Boston, who was their recruit. He went to just go see him play because he knew it was a big game, and they were like, "What's up with Houtman?" And he's like, "I don't know. I just heard he can shoot it." Like I was already past that I was part of that learning process.
Yeah.
Later, that pushed me, you
Yeah.
know,
So
later in life.
let's talk a little bit about where you end up eventually,
Mhm.
but you mentioned you're a math guy. I mean, always been a good student. That was
Mhm.
never a concern for where you were gonna whether you were gonna qualify to play as we sometimes hear about student athletes, especially at that time period, right? Um, but where where were you looking? How did you
Mhm.
end up where you ended up? And talk us through that process.
Well, I wanted to play basketball in college, but nobody really did that in our family like that.
Hmm.
And the hype was starting, you know. This is the other side of hip hop where, it's good that you can feel a certain way and want to do things and use art to express yourself. But then there's this other side of laziness that comes with it as well. And my parents were on that. So it was more of like what was the best financial decision for us to try to get an education. Um, like I said, I wasn't really recruited like that. I didn't understand how it really worked.
Hmm.
I remember visiting Bentley, but visiting them more on the business administration side and not like directly through the coach. And it wasn't until I played in like an all-star game after, you know, I'm dunking all over people in an all-star game that like Merrimack or one of these other D2 schools are like, hey, whoa, what's going on here? But once again, if I brought that back to the home, structured home, hard workers, um, is that a pipe dream or isn't it? Like these are your options. Like you got into Northeastern, it's tough to get it, tough to pay for that school. Um, I think it was Curry College, a Division III school. UMass Dartmouth was always the backup plan. Um, and then I got into Stonehill College, and they had a great package because that's when they were trying to, I think, do a admirable job of trying to get more diversity with students in there.
Hmm.
Um, we didn't know about it as much, um, And I don't think that was the main reason why I got into that school, but that is one of the main reasons why it was more affordable.
Hmm.
And I was able to go there. And I think that when I went there, because I wasn't a recruit, I fell under a walk on. You know, that was my introduction to the business of basketball.
Yeah, and that's it's so interesting that yes, people aren't seeing and people are seeing it. It's an interesting time, but you're scoring 24 points per game for a perennial, powerhouse in the state, a Division I school. New Bedford High School is there's been times in the last 40 years where it's been the biggest public high school this side of the Mississippi River, on the east side of the Mississippi River. So it's not like it's a small place.
Mhm.
So to be a standout just there and then a standout in the community, it's just it's a mind boggle to look back, right, through the history 25 years ago and think, how are you
Mhm.
not, getting seen by somebody? If you average 24 points a game now, someone's going to give you multiple offers, right? Whether it's even just D3 or D2 or D1, or maybe there's a small professional
Mhm.
program in a country in Europe, right? Or as
Right.
we'll talk about more about Africa or South America, the Brazilian league or an
Mhm.
Argentine league or something like that. So again, it's a little bit as you say, it's very interesting to just look at and try to put your career into this time capsule and try to express why it is so unique, why you are such a pioneer in this regard.
Mhm.
Even during that 93, 94 stretch, um, you don't really, you get a lot of guys getting views, but there wasn't anybody launching themselves directly to the NBA through that pipeline or directly to
Right.
Major League Baseball or directly to the NFL. There was guys who uh, had Division I looks or Division II looks or Division III looks, but it wasn't, you know, like it is today, where we know
Right.
about somebody at the age of 12, like we know about
Right.
somebody at the age of 10, rivals.com or
Mhm.
ESPN.com, top 300, right? Like these kids are anointed at such a young age.
Right.
Um, so anyway, just to again provide some historical context for people watching this.
Well, yeah, I mean it's looking back, yeah, obviously. But we didn't 97, I think it's almost like to 01 where you don't realize what the financial benefit of that is. So
Yeah,
once that started happening,
yeah.
now you can look and see the trickle effect of, all right, now we got to get these kids ready as a freshman. You got to get
Hmm.
them ready. Like, we got KG coming in, or you got these you just saw you saw what. And then also I want to say television had a little bit of more of effect of that too. So
Hmm.
you have cable networks coming um in this repeat of being able to see the same thing over and over again, and introduction of like ESPN types. And like before it was just local news where you heard about the kid, and other than that you had to be kind of maybe in a big area, maybe like leading up to like 95, 96, 97.
It was
Don't
a
forget the rules of AAU were 10th grade. You had to be a freshman or sophomore that played on varsity to go play ninth and 10th grade AAU. It was like a 2 summer window. That was it. You played in ninth grade, played as a sophomore, and it's like, okay, that kid is so and so for Boston this, and he's gonna go somewhere, and now he's this junior. Like that was it. Then I want to say that my era, particularly like my grade, 98, 97, 98, 99, is where it was like, hold on, this is the pipeline. And I think it lasted for like 3 or 4 good years,
Mhm.
where it was like, all right, hold on, this is, and then now you see what leads into the LeBrons and and those like real AAU kids that I
Yeah.
would say.
When you say AAU, again, to put it in context, I remember Buddies, I remember BABC. There wasn't many other AAU programs. It wasn't like there's an AAU program every town, every city. This was a completely different uh, field of play, completely different field of play than what you have today. And you really had to earn it, or you had to be spotted at the right space at the right time. And a lot of people fell
Crazy.
through the cracks. It was very easy to
Hmm.
do because of the platforms and what the opportunities were in that regard. So being a prep star, getting, like you said, it sounds like this one all-star game, this one time that people could see you and you performed. And it's just
Mhm.
an interesting thing to speak about. Well, let's
Yeah.
talk about Stonehill. And I
Mhm.
know it was not a long time that you stayed there, but touch on that if you can briefly,
Stonehill,
your time there.
great experience. Stonehill's Division 2. So third day of school, we got lifting and shooting, and I'm excited. I'm like, wow, look at this. Like, I was excited just as a freshman in high school to practice every day. I was used to the Boys and Girls Club where you had one practice a week, you know? So I was just excited. Some people hate practice. I love practice.
Yeah.
So Stonehill was right into it, and it was tough because I was a walk-on. So I was talented. I was doing well in pickup run and I'm like, wow, all right, cool. I'm gonna be able to make this team. I had that mentality of, and just to add to the AAU thing too, not to just destroy AAU, but families were different back when we in the
Hmm.
90s. Like you weren't just s- sending off 11 weekends,
Hmm.
you know, Yeah, ultimately being an expense. Um, so never mind not having the money. But you get this when I got to Stonehill, I'm like, wow, I just love the college experience. Uh, I love being a part of that, being part of the team, and that whole climb from getting there all the way into like once the season started, I was totally in love with. Then I find out like, hold on, man, I wasn't recruited,
Hmm.
and ultimately they're paying that individual to be here. So I had to work double time. Another thing was the coach, I didn't really meet him. So like now I'm learning about that part of it, and I happen to have one of those tougher military type coaches that kind of walked into a job.
Hmm.
The coach before that had passed. Long story short, we have a hell of a team. We end up being 22nd in the nation. I get a couple minutes here and there towards the end of the game. Um, uh, we got a sophomore on our team by the name of Sean Fine,
Hmm.
out of the Cape. He's getting 45. Him and I are battling. I'm like, man, I wish I could be out there with him, you know.
Yeah.
So after my freshman year,
And you guys made the Sweet 16 that year as well. Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
So I think we come in second in the league, but we end up winning and getting a bid to the NCAAs, and we get to the Sweet 16 and losing like it was like double overtime when we
Yeah.
lost. It's crazy. Um, but after that, people started leaving.
Hmm.
So Sean Light leaves and he goes to Georgia Tech. We're like, what? I'm like, is that even? So now we're starting to enter into this stuff, Zach, that's happening all day, every day now. Um, so he leaves, another kid leaves. So I'm like, all right, well, at least I'll get my shot. Didn't get the shot I thought I wanted.
Hmm.
Talked to the coach. He said maybe junior, senior year, you can
Hmm.
do your thing. I'm going to my dad, like, hey man. He's like, give it another shot. We go to a game, we're getting smacked. He didn't play me on purpose type of thing. And I'm like, so let me check my eligibility because I want to go to junior college and try this out.
Yeah, because this is not what we have now, the NILs and the nonstop transfer, and you don't have to sit out a day. This is if you're transferring,
You got to do that right
you got to
away, and
sit 1 year, and that could be
there's
a
certain criteria.
yeah,
There's certain
long process.
criteria,
Yeah.
and like my situation is different because if it came up now, it would be open season.
Uh-huh.
So
Yep.
I end up quitting around December after that game. My father's like, you know what? It's whatever. I want to go to Division 3 because I go to look and I find out that my freshman year I played in about 7 or 8 games or 9 games or something like that. And then my sophomore year, I played like 1 minute of one game. So they were willing to make that 1 year altogether. You know what I mean? I'm like, what's going on here? But I
Yeah.
would have to transfer immediately, and I had to transfer down.
You had to go down from Division
Yeah.
Two
So if
to
I
Division
sat out
Three.
and just finished at Stonehill, because that's what I was gonna do. Don't forget, I was there. My grades got me into the school.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was just gonna finish out and then see what that summer would, maybe go to a junior college near Boston or try to go to a Division II or try to go one. Because I saw the training and I saw my body starting to change and I knew it was a process, but I didn't feel like I was getting a fair shot. And
Sure.
everybody was leaving too. Coach was leaving. So I find out if I don't transfer down, I'm gonna lose like 2 years of eligibility. Like that hurt because I didn't even play. So I decided to go to UMass Dartmouth. I play right away. Um, and then I had like what do they call it?
How does that process happen? I mean, you get to play right away. Obviously you've been training for a year, even though you're not getting the minutes in the games, but you're at a good program, in terms of results. How are you received at the Division III program as a transfer, especially during this time frame where transferring is not the norm?
Mid-season,
How did that
right?
affect the culture? How does the coach receive you? I mean, that had to have been an extremely difficult decision to make.
It was tough. It was tough. I did well right away. So like we had a tournament in Virginia. I got like all tournament team. They're like, wow, this is all we're missing. Um, but then what do they call it? Like when the honeymoon ends. So it hit me like a ton of bricks when school started because it was just ball from like after Christmas and you got these 3 or 4 weeks. But then when school started and I'm like, damn, like, like it hit me where I'm like, I felt like I was better than that. And Brian Baptiste did one of the best things ever. He sat me. He just sat me. He goes, you know what? You're doing better coming off the bench. And then he did it to see what I would really do too. And what I did was, you know, I got screamed at by my uncle and my father one day after one of the games, and they were like, "You're not playing like you're the best on the court, so I don't even know why you're playing." It was short and sweet with those guys, and I respected them as a kid. So that changed me. So I went right back to, you know what? These are the minutes I'm getting. This is what I deserve. So I'm gonna make the most of it while I'm out there. And I did well. I did better, but I could have did a lot better. We didn't win that league that year, and that was like the first time in like how many years they didn't win it. Um, so it was just it was a learning experience, and I was at a crossroad where it was like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna work hard? Because that was getting into the level of I would just embarrass myself because you leave a school because you deserve to play, and then now you're playing, and then now all of a sudden it isn't the caliber that you wanted,
Hmm.
and it's like these guys have been working their behinds off all year as well, and I didn't want to be like that chauvinistic. So I think I rubbed a few shoulders wrong, but I ended up being like the best thing that happened and humbled me because not everything's guaranteed.
So it's been an interesting first 2 years of college.
Hmm.
You've obviously told yourself basketball is still important. You haven't gotten it all out of your system. You want to keep playing. You know that you can keep playing at a high level. So you come out of this sophomore year. What is the mentality going into your junior year?
Well, my sophomore year, that summer changed my whole trajectory. So we got a call from a gentleman by the name of Malcolm Smith, from Boston. Um, he's a coach at UMass Boston, and he coached summer ball and goes to Rocha and different places. And a gentleman by the name of Paulo de Barros from Dorchester. He used to always bring soccer teams to Cape Verde Islands, and he decided to bring a basketball team in the last couple of years. But this year they were trying to bring a team that could actually compete. So Malcolm called my dad, said, "Hey, it's a long shot, but we're gonna go to Cape Verde for a couple of weeks this summer, trying to bring a 21 and under team out there. What do you think of you and your son and a couple of guys from New Bedford joining that team? We got a few guys from Boston, and got a couple of guys from Brockton. We're gonna go out there." And hopefully we're going to play against the national team, but we're going to play against some competition. I think it'll be a good experience for the kids, and we'll get back. So my parents were excited about that. My mother was really excited because that was something where you know, my grandmother, and just this whole, like, this is your chance to see, you know, where your ancestors are from.
Hmm.
Uh,
Had you ever been to
so
the islands before?
nope, nope. This is summer of let's say 99. Yeah, because Isaiah graduated that senior year. So five
And
of us from New
and
Bedford.
and so just to get a little bit background here, you have dual citizenship through your parents, through your grandparents. How are you a dual citizen actually?
Yeah, I'm a dual citizen now.
And
I
are
got
you
that through the national team, through the family.
through the family? Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
who's the first descendant to
Oh, the
be
first
born?
descendants directly are my great grandparents,
Okay.
but my grandparents did spend that time out there
Okay.
during that Depression era.
Okay.
But like, so we got a chance to go out there. So we trained in for Boston for like 6 weeks. We go up there a couple times a week. Um, and it was exciting, man. I was just finding flipping through some of those photos. And five of us from New Bedford got to go out there. So myself, my brother Sam Acker, Jared Ramus, and Ivan Brito. We all got to go out there, and we teamed up with the guys from Boston. We went to Sile Island at first, played a little bit out there. Then we went to Pryor, the mainland, and we played against the junior national team. We played against the senior national team, and I really excelled in those games. Um, Dunking all over them, playing hard. We lost both games. We got to see what international basketball was, the pace, the strength, the toughness of it, the difference of the refs, the fact that, you know, the game just goes on. You can't just call timeouts in the middle of the game.
Mhm.
The heat, you know, being in Africa. But when we first got there, something just went through us because, you know, it's something where our ancestors really walked, and it's Africa, not, you know, we weren't raised on these race wars. We understood that things weren't cool for minorities, and we understood that a lot of things weren't even, but we weren't raised as victims. So when we get there, it was something goes through you when you see where your, you know, when your family, where you guys come from, and then getting to meet people. So I fell in love with the country immediately. And after those games, I played exceptionally well. They asked me to join the national team and go to Angola for what the African championships were.
And the senior national team, correct?
Yep, the senior national
And,
team. So I called my parents.
what year is this?
This is 99, the summer of
99.
99.
Okay.
So they had the qualifiers in Angola. Now, Angola was just finishing the 29-year war of the Diamond War out there. So it was a war zone. Deep down, I didn't want to go anyway because I was ready to go home because I'm a 19-year-old kid or 20. What was I? Yeah, 19, 20.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want to get back to the States. I love it out here. It was cool to see where we're from, but you know, I got to get back. It's $75 to call mom for 3 minutes.
Oh, the days,
Um,
man. Wow, what a time
right.
capsule, huh?
Yeah, man. So I call my parents. I go, listen, I did well. They want me to join the national team. I think I'm gonna do it. You know, my mother, get back here. You're not leaving school. You're not doing this. And I'm like, no, mom, it's not that. It's the national team. It's just a couple weeks. They try to compete, they try to go to Olympics. They don't, you know what I mean? I said, but deep down Angola, they were saying how you might have to hold your breath in the shower. You might have to watch certain stuff because they still have live war zones. I wasn't feeling that. So I came back. I told them, yeah, we can talk about it. So every 2 years following that, I go back and play at UMass, not to skip over the UMass stuff, but then in 2001, when it happened, that's when I went out there in the summers as a player.
Okay.
So
All right.
that sophomore year, that summer changed everything because now we played against men, and coming back to UMass Dartmouth, I had a clearer head. I understood, like, listen, now I did get into the business school. And I had this goal of I want to finish school. Um, but like now I had a little bit more of an edge where it was like, all right, the D2 thing, I got out of my system. It is what it is. It didn't work out. Get over it. You did get to play at a high level this summer. Now let's put it together. You know, be a good teammate. And in my junior year, we had a great team. We had because of the non-transfer protocols or whatever you want to call it, we had like 4 or 5 guys that were scholarship guys at Division II schools and low D1 schools. And we all played together. We became brothers. We loved it. Division III, you gotta love the game,
Mhm.
because you're paying. Uh, and we won my senior year. Put it this way, we didn't lose a game for 2 years at home.
Wow.
My senior year, we had 25-3, #2 in the country. Um, and it was just, bro, I've been lucky to play with great teammates, man. Like that's the thing I miss the most, you know, is hanging with teammates. I got to be so many different teammates. I mean,
Mhm.
have so many different teammates.
It's a special culture to play. When
Hmm.
everyone's got that common goal, you're wearing the same
Absolutely.
uniform. And again, we're touching upon a career that it started with family for you, right? And you're
Absolutely.
representing the last name, on the back of your
Hmm.
jersey. Then you go in and you represent your town. Now you're talking about representing, you went to UMass Dartmouth, which is still your community. It's not like you went
Absolutely.
away for college. You're still
Right.
representing your community and you're representing them on a national stage. Now, while that's happening, you've been introduced to your, heritage, your ancestors, as you said it, and now you've got to represent the national team. So you've had this trajectory where you're constantly being asked to just play a game, right? Basketball is just a game,
That's a game.
but what you're doing with the game is more than just the game because
Right.
you have to, sometimes the ball is going to bounce your way, sometimes it's not. But what are the controllables? And you can control being a good teammate, you can control working hard, you can control playing with respect. And if you aren't doing those things, it's just that simple. You're not going to be the reason why we're even speaking in the first place, a candidate for any sort of Hall of Fame. So at UMass Dartmouth, as you touched upon, you were an NABC, National Association of Basketball Coaches, All-American Division III. You averaged 19 points per game. You scored 1,250 points in a little over 2 years of eligibility, which is a lot
Hmm.
of points. Um, you get the team to the Sweet 16. You didn't win the whole thing, but you got them to the Sweet 16, which let's put it in context now that time has gone on. You yourself were inducted into the UMass Dartmouth Athletic Hall of Fame for your career.
Hmm.
That team itself, the 2001 team, was inducted into the UMass Dartmouth Athletic Hall of Fame. That's how historic
Hmm.
success that was. So, looking back on that, and you say, yes, you get these individual accolades, but it comes through the mechanism of a team, and it comes through a team sport. It comes through a sense of understanding where you belong in the greater scope of this whole thing.
Hmm.
When we try to now equate that just for a moment, just to touch on this, when you think about being nominated to the Basketball Hall of Fame, having gone through at least just this part of your career thus far, and we'll go through your professional side next and your national team side next, do you see how your name represents more than just Marques Houtman? Like, does that really start to register as you have gone back in time and taken this moment of reflection?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I owe it to many people. Um, and like the Division III thing, uh, and I hopefully kids get to hear this and parents, because being me missing my teammates, this isn't just about being on a team and getting these wins. Like I've been on a lot of winning teams, and the reason why is because it's about true accountability. So when you're on a team, you get to know who they are. You get to know, what moves them is like, like, so you can pick at them or you can hold people accountable. So like I remember being at the library until, you know, 10:50 or 9:50.
At night, not the morning, right?
Right. Right. But I had to learn that stuff. Now the beer was in hand at 9:51.
But you were
But the
disciplined enough to wait that extra minute.
the
And, and
the
and we
point
joke
was,
about it, but that's a real thing. That really is
why
a
are we
real thing.
here?
Yeah.
Why are you here?
Yeah.
We're not here for a team. We ain't here to play ball.
Hmm.
Like there's like 5 or 6 business majors on that Division 2, on that number 2 team. You know, we're still in contact. I'm still in contact with a few of them. You know, successful business guys that have like good incomes and responsibility and add to the business world. So it was this accountability, you know, and that's what we did. Um, so Division 3, you don't have to play. You don't have to do it. You know, you're paying. So
Mhm.
those type of things, and like I tell kids, I wouldn't make $1 if I didn't graduate from Charlton College of Business at UMass Dartmouth. I wouldn't have made $1 because that taught me sacrifice and being next to people that have different goals and being able to stay on your goals and know that, you know, it's your consequence. And hopefully it's a positive consequence after you decide to do something. So so it was easy to be able to scream at somebody on your team because they just screamed at you and what it wasn't a low blow. It was this family that we're trying to, you know, that we're trying to just keep with. So that's what's missing, you know, like, oh, they lost by 4 the other day. I was listening to one of the kids talk and at the school, and we lost by 4 and they were up 11. And this, it's because that's eye contact time, man. The last 5 minutes of the game. That's Zach, man. We good?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because in the pros, we look at you and then you got to go. If you ain't ready, you got to go. Well, you
Mm-hmm.
should bow out because this now, you know, and you got livelihood on the line.
Yeah.
So that like I said, it's always gonna come back to that. I've been on great teams, but the great teams, I don't think it would be for everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's it's tough. It's easy to look and say, oh yeah, they just blew that team out, but it's because you didn't realize that something happened to somebody's father earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and at least he could say something to the team because some of that stuff stays in, and that's what all these kids are dealing with.
Yeah.
So,
No, again, it's the global game. You know, it's
yep.
an important game for so many reasons. It's a great connector of cultures. It's a great connector of people. It's a challenge. It's not as simple as just putting a ball in a hole, right? It is that simple, but it's not that simple. And
Right.
and
It's both.
that's that's
Exactly.
that's the context that stories like yours, tell.
Mhm.
And that's a very, very interesting take, and it's very appreciated that you would share it in that way.
Mhm.
Um, let's get back to your now out of college.
Mhm.
You are you still got something clearly in the tank. You still got something clearly in the system to
Right.
keep playing. You said that coming out of that summer after your sophomore year, where you made that trip to the Cape Verde Islands with some friends and other members of the Massachusetts community, that you said, I'm going to play every 2 years for the national team. So walk us through that first time in 2003. You played in the FIBA pre-qualifying tournament in Senegal. You scored 24 points against Senegal, 18 points against Mali. You're still very young, right? We're talking you're 22 years old at this point,
Mhm.
and how do you handle that pressure, especially for, again, we've talked about this, the reason that you're even a candidate for the Hall of Fame in the first place is that Cape Verde has never had this kind of success before, right?
Mhm.
2003 is 4 years before you earn that honor, before the national team earns that bronze medal in the
Mhm.
Africa Cup. So, what does that feel like in 2003, your first real time playing for the senior national team in competition? And how did you find that you were able to have success on the court so quickly?
Well, to back up, so in 2000, I failed to mention, so UMass Dartmouth, we traveled to Portugal.
Okay.
We were one of the first D3 teams to go out there. We played against in a tournament against the junior pro teams out there that I'm still friends with some of them guys. I ended up playing against them in the pros and playing with some of them. But so we go out there. That's where we really became we became a family, that team. And then our senior year, we just went, we went and we had an excellent run. Uh, so that's going into my senior year. Then I played with the national team at the end of my senior year in like May of 2001. I go out for the national team for the Olympic qualifiers. We don't even make the we don't even make the African tournament. So the tournament that we end up winning in 2007 that we come in third in, only 16 teams go to that. And out of Africa, there's a bunch. So we were in our little corner trying to just get out, just to qualify for that one. So 2001, I trained up for that. And that's where the humility came, because I played against professionals that summer. I worked hard, but I only played like 3 or 4 minutes, but I was excited because the pace was just crazy. Like the pace, that was the first country versus country stuff. You know, I'm in Senegal, I'm 21. It's 2001, right before the towers. You know, this is before all that stuff. So I was just excited to be out there, and I had to play the one. And I'm like, wow, this pace. And I was just happy to get it up and over half court, and talking to the coaches, and they were like, you know what, you did all right. So when I went back home and I'm getting ready to graduate, and I have an MIS degree, Information Systems Management. A lot of people are coming out of school to make 70,000, 80,000. And I come home one day and I go to my parents and I go, I'm not going to Boston. I'm not going to work. I'm going to go try this Portuguese league. It's only 1,200 a month. So 1,500 a month. It was supposed to be 2,000 or whatever. And they're like, my mother's like, you gotta be kidding me. But like, this kid type of thing, you know? But being the wonderful people that they are, they sat there and said, you did what we've asked you to do when it comes to your education. So we back you, you know? So I went out to Portugal in October of 2003, I think, because I had to finish at UMass. And I go out there with Benfica and I get cut. Well, I couldn't make a team. It was too late. I come back. My father's like, oh my God, man, it felt so bad for me. But you know what happens, Zach? I saw the process. I saw what it was. And I said, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be able to, I see the gap. Like definitely thought I could play in the NBA. But I was like, I see this gap. I see what it is. And I see the life that they're living, you know, like they're not, it's a life I want to try out. So I come back, stay in shape. I end up getting a call about a month later. That's with Benfica. Didn't work out with them. I went to the second division. Got stiffed on half my contract. Didn't read the contract. Next thing you know, I'm not going home for Christmas. You know, stuff like that, man. Mom getting sick, aunt's getting sick. But stiffed on half of the deal. But guess what, man? Playing ball every day. I'm an avid reader, love philosophy, love all this other stuff. I'm reading all day. I'm in heaven. So I enjoyed it. You know, I got better. I felt as though I could move forward with it. I averaged 20 in that second division. I'm still fighting this Division III tag.
To be clear, college Division III in America.
Yes, college.
The
Right,
Division
exactly.
II you're speaking about is in Europe.
Right, the second division Portuguese league.
Just to clarify.
Now I'm fighting, exactly. Thank you. I'm fighting the fact that I'm a Division III basketball player from the States versus Division I is just going to get that deal.
Yeah.
So I'm getting ready to sign back in Portugal. For the first division, I did earn a deal with one of the teams that we did play against that were watching me. And I was ready to sign, and then I got a call from a gentleman by the name of Dan Savage and out of the Cape. And he said, hey, man, I'm starting this ABA team. And guess who's the coach? I'm like, who? Said Joe Jellybean Bryant, Kobe Bryant's father. And I'm signing a couple of the N1 guys, and I want to sign you playing at UMass Dartmouth. We're playing in New Bedford area in Boston. It's called the Boston Frenzy. It's the American Basketball Association that's making a little comeback. You know,
red, white, and
I
blue
think
ball.
it'll be good.
Red, white, and blue ball. You didn't grow the afro though. Pardon me.
Couldn't do it. I cut my own hair, so I got no patience. So long story short, I played that season with Jellybean. Our team ended up folding. Was
But
a good
talk about that.
experience.
Talk about that year. I mean, you're playing for the father of what some people call the greatest basketball player ever, if not one of the top five, top 10 ever. I think that's indisputable.
Yeah, man.
What is, yeah, what is that experience? Also, playing professional ball, even though it's not the NBA, but playing professional ball in the same gym that you became, you know, again, at that school, a two-time Hall of
Right.
Famer. Yeah, that must have been almost euphoric in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. The first meeting him was cool because Coach he was down to earth. He was cool. He reminded me of my dad's era, those 70s smooth guys, man. You know,
And those who don't know, Jellybean played for the Sixers briefly, but played 10 years overseas in Italy.
yeah,
That's where
yeah.
Kobe grew up and then came back to the States when Kobe showed that he was so special as a high school player.
Hmm.
So Joe, also, I'm sure, I'm looking forward to hearing you express this, uh, could give you a lot of information, not about just, putting the ball in the hole, knowing how to cover the pick and roll, but how to be a professional, how to play overseas, how to carry yourself off the court. I would think those would be the
Oh
lessons that
yeah.
you
He
really,
was,
really take from someone like that.
yeah, he was a good father figure for us, but I feel like that team we had too many names, too much talent, and it just didn't mesh. So the team side, we should have had more wins. We ended up folding, but as far as the experience with him, it was cool because my goal going into that was obviously to get signed, but I was like, I'm gonna be a sponge because he reminded me of like my dad's era, and they were always giving you something, so little tidbits of whatever. It could be life, it could be ball, but he had that. So really learned the pick and roll with him. Really learn, two out. I mean, two and the three and the two set, like three on one side, two on the other side. Learned how to like. It's not necessarily a play call. It's more of reactionary. Reading the defense. Um, but I got good advice from him. I remember one time, during that time, cancer has been crazy in my family. Lost so many people to cancer, and I know cancer just run rampant through everybody. But I lost a few aunts, and it hit me. I lost about three aunts at the time, and one of them got cancer. So I'm not really an expressive person like that sometimes, but it made an effect on my game. So we were down in Atlanta, and I just wasn't shooting Zach. I was just like, pfft. It was just one of those where it just like I needed a couple days to keep it real. And
You couldn't compartmentalize
yeah,
the
man, it
family
was just like
situation with your job, which so many
everybody's
people,
at
it happens.
home
Yeah.
and I'm over here playing on the road. So I remember helicopter from N1 was like, bro, I don't know what's going on, man. I don't know why. Like, we're shooters, man. You need to get and it was one of those where I didn't even answer. It was like one of those where you're like, so at the airport, I never forget this. Coach sits next to me. Goes, hey man, what's going on, man? He wasn't, you know, I think we went to Tennessee and we went to Atlanta. I was like, man, I just wasn't feeling it. He goes, yeah, man, but like, what's going on? I was like, my aunt got sick and this and that. And I'm like, he goes, oh, he got sick. You're sick, huh? So yeah. He goes, I don't know how you're gonna take this, but I gotta tell you something, man. Like what? He goes, you gotta develop some thick skin, son. He goes, because people are gonna die, man.
Mm,
And you gotta make the court your sanctuary.
mm.
And he got even closer to me, and he was just like, do you see what my son's going through? And at that time, Kobe was going back and forth, because he had a unfortunate situation, court case. And he's like, he's going from the courtroom to the court and getting 40. And he said it again. He goes, you going to the court, to the court and getting 40. He goes, when you cross those lines, you got it. Something got to happen to you, because if not, then it's going to be taken.
Hmm.
So I'm thinking, whoa, hold on, man. He's right. There's certain things in life that you can't control. What am I going to do with it? Because there's going to be more coming. So that's a major thing I took from him. Um, and the other thing was, how to handle yourself as a professional.
Hmm.
Um, and how to lose, man. We lost a few games. It was a lot of hype. It was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
Um, I had a blast. Moses Malone's son played on that team. It was cool. But after that, I'm like, hold on, if I'm gonna I gotta get back over, because I gotta get back overseas, because now ABA is only paying you from November to March, and then it's not guaranteed. Like in Europe, they get you out there September all the way to May. Um, the league is longer, one game a week, or here and there, but it was just more structured. So that's why I ended up going, back over.
So talk to me about how long you played in Europe, where you played, some of the highlights,
Mhm.
how would you summarize your professional playing career? Any injuries that may have come in the way, any accolades that may have happened. I think just speak to what it's like to be a professional overseas. Do you speak another language? Do you speak Creole or
I can
Portuguese or,
understand the Creole and Portuguese.
okay.
Um, like I
Because you're also doing this again, time capsule, at a time where Google Translate ain't a thing, right?
Nothing.
Yeah, I think Rosetta Stone was like the greatest thing that ever happened, but not everyone had access to it.
Right, right.
So how do you navigate that as a young man?
Honestly, let's be honest. I didn't navigate it well. A lot, a lot happened. So I go from making nothing to go and playing with Jellybean. And then after that, what happened was I went, I had some pitfalls there. So before I go back to Europe, that team folds, and I tried to come back around with them again. And ultimately, my money isn't right, So I'm inconveniencing people and not realizing it. So my parents said, you can't stay here, man. You got to go get your stuff together. You're a smart kid, but you ain't doing it here. And that was one of those things where it was like, hold on, man. That's right, man. I gotta figure this out. So I'm living with my aunt, getting my stuff in order. National team calls. There's a tournament in China called the Lusophone Games,
And this is 2006.
2006. Yep. Because it really folded in 2005. I was playing with the 2004, but it was really like over with that. I missed a little deadline because I didn't sign by like December. So that's when I ended up lingering. Now you're just accumulating bills. Um, so long story short, get my act together. I play in that tournament in China. There's an opening in Port for Porto that I signed with them.
This is
Um,
FC Porto in the Portuguese first division.
yep, first division league. Um, but once again, I didn't have my engine up right. I was close to getting cut. Um, I'll never forget the guard in front of me, Julian Blanks, out of Pennsylvania, hell of a guard. He came up to me. He was like, "Listen, man, they're looking at other guards, bro. So like, you need to turn it up if you go in there tomorrow. I'm just giving you a heads up, man, because you're a cool dude." And I'm like, "Damn, man, what the heck's going on?" The following day, for some reason, he gets pushed in a certain manner. It was a whack play, and he gets hurt. And coach didn't put me in for that whole first half because they were getting ready to get rid of me, and they had to put me in that second half. And we ended up getting a big win against Benfica. And I ended up staying, and I was that backup guard, and I started for about 22 games, kept it at, you know, kept us no less than second place. After that, I played the national team in the summer, and that's when we win the bronze. And instead of going to Europe, and I was trying to sign in Spain, that's when I signed in Angola, in that national team there. Um, and that's like where that money came, man. And sometimes I didn't handle that right. So after playing in Greece in that summer, because we played in the pre-Olympics, played against New Zealand, we played against Germany, we played against Dirk Nowitzki, um, another Hall of Famer, you know, uh, true professional. After that, I came home, and this is something I do regret. I was upset at the playing time that I had in Greece, and I took off instead of going back to Cape Verde with the national team. I just flew home. I wasn't home for like 20 months. You know, it was a quick decision. But what ended up happening is I'm playing out back here in New Bedford, and I ended up almost fracturing my foot, having a bad dislocation and recovering. But it was just one of those things where that's where I feel like my stuff could have went a lot further. Um, that's why even being nominated here, is one of these things where it's like me, like, yeah, I might have helped out and done some things um, with this national team and other things like that, but nothing like putting stuff across your chest and playing for something that's bigger than you. And like years later, it's not about getting in no Hall of Fame or even what anybody even thinks. It's just or of being in there or not. It's just seeing the effect that it has on younger people, because I was literally one of those kids that was like, hold on, man. If I put work in, you know, because these kids put it together. If I put this work in, something good could happen. So as far as the pro stuff, after being hurt, I recover. I played in 2009 in Libya with Cape Verde Islands. I had 13-9 against Tunisia. We beat Tunisia. Tunisia went to the Olympics. I'm right there. But then following that, I don't know. I think it was a wall. You know, I just sat there. It was just like, hold on, man. All this life stuff came at me fast. Um,
So in
and
2009, you finish that tournament, and then that's it.
well, I didn't resign.
Yeah.
I didn't. I went home. I thought it would kind of happen, but I let it drift. You ever let something drift?
Mhm.
Where it's like you can make that call, you can make that call, when it's like I was at a point where I wasn't sure where I was at. I was approaching 30.
Mhm.
Um, I was trying to figure out what the numbers were, you know, like what do I really want to do? Um, and I didn't end up really playing after that until I went to Cape Verde like in 2013. That's why when you hit me up and I'm like, hold on. Are they doing like is this some article that's like a reiteration of African basketball? And because, you know, I get people hit me up every now and then for interviews or stuff, and because you can look it up and say, hey man, you played during this time. And um but now in retrospect, seeing that there was a few things that can't be replicated, I guess you can say. Um and I think it's a good thing that a lot of people have dual citizenship now. And they look for it. Like, you know, the next guy comes up, it's like, where's his background? You know, some people hit me up and they go, "Oh, look, man, and like if you came up now, you would have went to the league, or you would have went to this, and now this guy's going here." And I say, I don't even. I'm a baller. I don't look at it that way. You know, like if somebody said, "Hey, I saw you play," and it made me think that I think that's cool. I was just finishing what I was starting, and trying to keep, you know, honorable name, because I saw that that's what came before me.
Basketball sounds like in so many ways it's had a lot of different meanings for you, and always been there as you from childhood to adulthood. What does the game do for you today?
So the game now today is definitely giving back. I have my youth team at the boys club.
The boys
You know, I
club
coach
in New Bedford,
boys and girls club in
Massachusetts.
New Bedford. I coach 7 to 12 year olds. It's called Cabo Sports Club. Uh, It's a grassroots organization that we're trying to do online learning, my brother and I, computer science, trying to get kids into computer science and programming. Everybody's on the phones. So trying to move them over to that. So trying to use that with ball. Uh, this summer we're going to be sending, a few dozen computers to a school out in Cape Verde. We're helping them create mobile classroom, um, paying a couple of kids to just do like low-level marketing, um, and just showing them that sports is a tool. Um, Now, as far as me personally, I use it. I still do basketball workouts. I use it as a way to stay in shape.
How often are you
Um,
working out with the basketball?
I try to get my shots up at least two times a week. But I do play in Providence in a league out there. I got MVP of a 40 and over league last summer,
Oh, that's
which
the
is
dream.
cool. Just sitting there shooting threes. I tease people. I try to play like Paul George now. Now I can play on the wing instead of playing the one. Um, But it's more of the stuff I miss, Zach, is the teammate stuff, and that's what I reiterate to these kids. Like, hey, man, not to be that old guy that says it's gonna end or stuff like that, but just like value your teammates. Um, uh,
Now, another thing I think a lot of people don't know is you do a lot of behind the scenes stuff for basketball and really to develop communities. Um, I know there's been a program where you've gone in and played basketball in prison to
mhm,
help inmates with their morale. It's not something that many national team or professional players of any level would do, right?
mhm,
Uh, you are on nonprofit boards helping out. Unfortunately, being a fishing port means that not only do fish come in through the port, but drugs come in through the port. So helping people overcome addiction in your hometown. You have a history of setting up fundraisers for the Cape Verde National Team online, and I've seen you mentor current national team players on both the male side and the female side. These are things that you know we see going on in the background. Um, why do you do them? Why give back in that way? Why not just be somebody who had their time and you move on?
Well, the main reason why I help people like that is because that's what happened to me. There's a lot of people that I could name, and they'd be more upset that I named them, um, because they saw something that they were able to do. So I'm able to do certain things because of a name or because of or a phone call that you can make, then I'm gonna do it because that's what happened for me. A lot of things aligned in order for me to be a professional athlete. And I think that to sit here and say, I got to do this, I got to do this first, or I got to do that. It doesn't matter unless somebody can have another chance or I'm not somebody that's gonna drive out of the way of a stick in the road. Okay, I'm gonna go move it away, even if the next guy puts it back. Like I living out of the country in my 20s and growing up in my 20s, kind of outside of here, it just makes you value stuff even more. So when somebody, you know, they can't take advantage of me, but they're gonna ask me for help. I'm gonna help them out, and I'm gonna hold them accountable. And so a lot of behind the scene things are what I heard behind the scenes. Suck it up, A lot of other people had it worse. Or I tell the kids all the time in philosophy, like all these sayings that are beat to death. Like you never know until you try. Um, if it isn't hard, it isn't worth like all these like just because they're repeated and you know them, that doesn't mean that they're not profound when you hear them in that moment, as if it was the first time, you know? So I like bringing that to people because that's kind of my story. Like if you work your behind off, who knows what could happen? So, and a lot of people help me out. The reason why I do coach and donate my time is because that's what I owe. I owe that. Um, I owe being in the boys and girls club gym a couple of nights a week. Um, and like you said, we grew up in a tough town. You know, we got labeled the heroin capital of the world. And I hated that, you know, because heroin grabbed, you know, some family members and people that were close to me by the throat. Um, so all those things, if I can, you know, sometimes my brother cringes when someone asks me for money, and now he's like, I'm having a conversation with them and telling them what are we doing, you know, before I give them a few dollars. Um, but that's just what I saw as a kid, and I think everybody knows that they could be doing better, and it has to be said a certain way, you know, it can't be thrown at you because everybody already knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm into the inner dialogue philosophy, and what you can find if you do your research is most of what people are saying to themselves is negative. They're not having a good dialogue. So I know that, you know, so I know that. So I know that somebody that we're always protecting ourselves when we're about to meet and talk to somebody else. And chances are everybody's going through the same type of thing. I could be doing better. Why didn't I do this better? I got to get over that. Why'd that person do it? And then what I like to do is say, listen, I already funneled all that. Like, now's the time for you to take your chance and your opportunity and have a consequence that's positive, you
Mm.
know, instead of that word being just have a negative connotation.
Mm.
You say consequence, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, it's like, no, that's life. Like, you do something, then something happens. So that's where I'm at with it.
Say
You
you
know,
get lucky enough, you get the email, the call, the text. Probably not from me. If you get elected, I would think the hall would reach out directly. But uh, who is the first person that you thank? Uh, at your induction ceremony, if it, if this was to come true.
I think the first person I got to thank is my parents, but namely my dad. He came home every night. This is 1985, man, 1984, 1987. Like, his friends are dying of heroin, man. You know, we had nothing, and he came home, and a woman that was waiting for him and shut everything off and made sure that we got to learn, and we had the best opportunity we could have for what the resources that we had. Um, so I I owe I owe them more than they will ever know, because it's you see what it is, man. It's not easy, you know. And for some reason they decided that they were gonna raise their kids, you know. And then you never know what could happen when you raise your kids. So like now, look, you got an athlete that other people are gonna realize he was an athlete, and like now they're gonna say, "Hey, you were an athlete. Congratulations at this." But the background stuff is, how do you feel about yourself at any given time? Because that's ultimately what you end up dealing with other people. So I think what attributes, because a lot of people, and I've had my ups and downs, and you know, even my dad a few times, like, what's going on, man? What's wrong with you? You lost this, you lost that, and you're not like, I go, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to lose it? Like, I did that. You know, one of the main things I wanted to tell you is one of my main philosophies is I call it, it's 51%. So no matter what in the scene, I owe 51% minimum of that scene. Even if somebody did me dirty or stole or whatever, like there's got to be a lopsided percentage where it's your responsibility. And that has nothing to do with the feeling isn't going to go away. You very well may be hurt, um, and the feeling might be justified. But in order to remember what happened, then you have to tip over. I'm at 99.9%. It was my fault. That's why I try not to mess up as much now. But when things were really rough, that's that philosophy, and that has gotten me through a lot, because getting through stuff that don't go well opens up. There's always something that opens up. So that's
Well,
what I think about that.
um, well, Marcus, I want to thank you for your time. I
Mhm.
want to congratulate you on just an absolute amazing honor. You represent many, many people, many, many different communities, a nation, and you are a true ambassador to the game. And I think we're all lucky to have you play at such a high level that you can not just speak about what the sport is, but the greater thing that the sport can do to help people and to inspire people and to give people belief that their dreams can come true. And I think that's a real amazing testament that you are the representative for all of us, who are dreamers and believers in this world. So thank you so much for your time and speaking with me. And let's hope for the best as we unveil your story to the world.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you too personally. We are brothers, we are buddies, but like as a friend, because I don't know if I would even tell it to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it should be more vocal. But you push in and saying, "Hey man, this is how we can get this done. Let's just get this information out no matter what happens." Like, I appreciate that, because it's one of those things where I'm like, "All right, well, I gotta go explain this, explain that," like, and I don't want to act like it is nothing but honorable, to be a part of. So I appreciate you, helping me in such an organized fashion. And you got a beautiful family. Remember you since we were younger, man, and I'm happy for you, man. So I
Uh,
appreciate it.
all the love and hugs, my friend. All the love
Yeah,
and
for
hugs.
sure.